So The Haunting of Hill House, episode 7, Eulogy, in my opinion, was really the Hugh episode. A lot of people were saying the Hugh episode was episode 6, Two Storms, but this to me was more focused on him and explained him a lot, what he's about. This episode's all about him being the original fixer of the family, like Shirley, and how this Haunting of Hill House was his first huge mess up, and how in current time he's trying to redeem himself and fix a new mess up that's happened in the family with Nell's death. This episode's about losing control, when you always want to control everything and fix it, and you just gotta let go sometimes and realize you have no control. And when you're trying so hard to fix everything, you're doing a lot of times more damage than good if you overdo it. So you see a lot of these themes throughout. So jumping right into it, so we open in the past at the police station when Hugh is with Officer Beckley after the incident on the last night at Hill House. And Beckley, as a cop, his strategy here when interrogating Hugh is taking his sweet time, asking if he likes cream in his coffee and sugar, and like, oh, I'll go back and put it in for you. He's trying to see how anxious Hugh is coming off to leave and testing his patience. And he literally says, you could leave if you want, but it wouldn't look so good. And Hugh in this moment just looks shell-shocked. The actor of Henry Thomas is really good at this facial expression, and really to me was perfectly cast in a role like this. His face literally just says confused, shocked, and not knowing what to do. And just looking through his face, you can see whatever he saw the last night in that red room completely messed him up. And we see the effects of this incident on Hugh highlighted throughout this episode in current time. And the cop here is saying to Hugh, it's a huge mess here. It's a mess with the wife at the medical examiner, and it's a mess that your kids were pulled out of bed in the middle of the night. We haven't talked about the other body. And quickly Hugh's like, that didn't have anything to do with us. So is this the same body we're going to see later in the episode that was discovered in the house? I'm not 100% sure on that. They might be misleading us here. The cop's like, you can fix it. You can fix it right here. You're good at fixing things, I hear. Is that right? And he's like, I'm not so sure anymore. This is where this change happened in him now. This is where he realized he messed up and he didn't fix something. And the cop's pulling at his strings here, and he's like, if you leave or lawyer up, this mess begins to spread till it becomes bigger than both of us. And the whole season of the show so far has shown us the effects of this mess up. And like I said, we're seeing in this episode now Hugh trying to actually fix this mess up in current time. So in the present, we see Hugh at Shirley's, and the daughter's like, how come I've never met you? And the brother doesn't remember seeing him either, but he says he met him when he was really little. So this is pretty bizarre that he really, we're learning, deserted his family here. To not even meet his granddaughter is crazy. And then Kevin walks in, Mr. Guilty, and Shirley just sends him out and doesn't want to talk about it. Which I get. And again, I tell you, I relate to Shirley a lot for me. And I would do the same thing in that situation. Like, okay, right now I'm all in on Nell's death and grieving and focusing on getting everything right for that. I wouldn't even want to touch what I just found out last night. And I get where Shirley's coming from to leave that on a shelf till later and get some space. And the dad thinks it's just about the money with Steven. And then he does the dad thing where he tries to show Shirley the good side of Kevin. They didn't mean harm in taking the money. So you see he's changing his tune back now to being the dad that's there for them and fixing, trying to be a father again. But Shirley's not having it. She's like, you want to lecture Theo. And then we get the reveal of Liv being the one who is appearing in Hugh's head and talking to him. And she's like, wonder where she got that from. I needed my space, but not like Cheryl. Since 3, Shirley needed her Shirley space. So this will allude to the car scene later with Shirley and Hugh. And how every kid reacts differently, and as a parent, you gotta adjust. And he says, what a mess. Great connecting and transition here, which I love about this show, because then it goes to him saying, what a mess, looking at the damage from the storm in Hill House. Now, in the past, we see the storm only hit hard on Hill House because Mr. Dudley said they just got a little rain down the road. And then we see there's all this water damage, and the X marks that we've been seeing in the house throughout the show, we learn now, are marking those spots of where there's damage. But to them, it doesn't make sense. It would just be water damage. It's got to be something else because of how much there is and how far it's spreading even to the basement. And Hugh says, I can fix it. So this is a huge undertaking he's taking on. And this is my point about early on where I was like, this episode's showing you when you're trying to fix something that you should know is way over your head and it can cause more of a problem if you dip into this. When really here, he should have just backed out of this house and called it a day. And then little Steven going downstairs with Mr. Dudley and Hugh says, what's that smell? And the dad says, it smells of ruin. And Mr. Dudley says, mold. We learn later on it's a dead body he's smelling. And the dad reacting, saying, Father Mucker is another great line in the show where it sums up a character in a nutshell. He is way too protective and careful around his kids. He's always been bad at communicating, and he always wants to hide them from realities that you must address at some point. And that's why Steven's like, really, Dad? Or he's coming to the age where it wouldn't be a big deal to say in that moment. It makes sense. And it also makes sense, too, because he shelters him so much, and Steven acts like an adult who is sheltered very much, not looking at the truth. He turns a blind eye because he hasn't been shown how to handle it. So when Hugh takes a picture of the damage, he sees a man's face in there. And looking at the damage, he's like, this could ruin us. So it wasn't the last night that was the beginning of the end of the Crains. The mess really began with the storm. So now back to current day, and we see the dad goes to Theo's, and she's like, I effed up last night, Daddy, even by Crane standards. So this is the challenge for the dad now, keeping the family together. Setting up a nice little storyline here for the end of this season. Theo has a great line here. She's like, I should have made more of an effort with you. I should have met you halfway. I tried. People F up. I guess you don't get that till you F up. This is so true, this line. A big part of growing up and being an adult is realizing your parents aren't superhuman, and they make mistakes too. And life is hard on everybody, and that they try their best. You start to sympathize with them the more you get older and go through similar challenges that they did and see from the other side how hard things can be. So really good stuff here, really relatable. And then the dad here puts together that this rift between Theo and Shirley doesn't have to do with the money. And Theo lets him stay, which is a nice moment. And Liv appears, she's like, I didn't expect that. And he's like, gotta start somewhere. And she's like, you were always good at assessing the damage. And some awesome editing here is where she's like, where is it? Where's the damage? And she's saying that as the Liv appearing to him, and then it cuts to the Liv in the past saying the same thing. And in this past, they're looking at blueprints together, and they're realizing they cannot flip this house if there's mold. And then they're really screwed if they don't, because then they have to stay there. So Liv says she'll make a master blueprint. And Hugh is hellbent it's the red room causing this damage now. This is where this water's coming from. And then it cuts back to the present, and Hugh sees Steve is fighting with Lee, and Liv says, don't wish he had better role models. We were solid, babe. The last few days don't count. Wasn't us. It's interesting that really she's representing the positive, optimistic voice in his head and the rational side. And remember, it's her appearing, but this is really Hugh's thoughts. Thinking of it, what his wife would say in these situations. And Hugh's really trying hard now. He goes over to Lee, sees she's okay. Steven sees this. Goes to Luke, and he's like, I'm proud of your 90 days. And here the wife comes in again. She's like, Luke doesn't want to make today about him. Just sit with him. Don't have to say anything. This again, him trying to control his over trying to fix and just learning how to just be there, not do too much. This is that rational voice in his head coming through as Liv. Or if you think it's a ghost, it's up to your theory there. And then Theo's girl shows up. She's a nice girl, man. She's doing everything for Theo. She's checking on her, just wants to see she's okay. And Theo's always pushing her away, putting up those walls. It's really funny with the dad and Luke waving at her after. But we do see later on that Theo is talking to her, so something good happens there. We just haven't seen it yet. I hope they kind of explain that. And then we finally meet Aunt Janet. And Liv's like, you knew she'd be here. So we see there's bad blood between her and Hugh, alluding to this time we don't know what happened with the kids with Aunt Janet. So it's going to be interesting. Then we go back to the past, and the mom brings downstairs the master blueprint she made. And Hugh's face completely drops looking at it. This is the real red flag by Liv right here, and where he should have been even more concerned about his wife's state of mind. And then in the present, we see Shirley's eulogy, and she reads, away. And I love the camera work here in the shot. It's almost like a dreamlike state with the flowers being kind of blurred out and a little bit of stretching of Shirley, and you'll see Luke's face like this with Nell in the background with her as the focus. Just a pretty shot. And a key line from this poem she's reading is she says, she's not dead, she's just away. For real, it's true, because Betneck Nell is out there. She's suffering around them. And Luke has the best eulogy here. His speeches are the best in the show, and this is another good one. He gets the best lines here, and he's like, I was born 90 seconds before Nell. And he's like, last time I saw her, she was driving me to rehab, and she said, you go in there and bring my brother back. Whew, tearjerker moment for me. That got me. And then Liv says that a girl, and Luke says, I was born 90 seconds before Nell, but she was always my big sister. Amazing stuff there. And this kind of speech also worries you, because you know this is real. If Luke is going really all in on this and taking this in to even think of a speech like that, it's gonna hit him hard. So then we go to the past, and we get my favorite scene in the episode, where Mr. Dudley gets his 15 minutes of fame here in the show and takes full advantage, and he sees these prints, and he's concerned. And he's like, maybe she could use a little time away from the house. And Hugh gets defensive here, but then Dudley really proves himself in his point, and we learn a lot in a really good monologue. And that his mother worked on the kitchen staff of Hill House, and he was born there. I wonder what's got to be messed up with Mr. Dudley that he was born in that house. There has to be something we'll find out. That has to have ugly consequences. But he grew up in the cottage on the end of the property, and he's still there to this day. But he said after night shifts, his mom would get scattered and talk to herself, giggling like a schoolgirl in love, talking low to a suitor. This, ironically, is also what the dad now we see is doing in present time. This is what he'd actually become in a bit. Did he get that really from Hill House? Or is it just pure trauma? And then his wife Clara he met, who also worked for Mrs. Hill. And Clara got pregnant, and Hill made her keep working through it, which is cruel. And this is giving you a hint now what type of people these Hills were. And this baby ended up being a stillborn. And he said from that she'd have nightmares for a brave woman that would even put her in a corner of a room. So learning from this just confirms that the house's trick, it feeds on your traumas. And this is the clearest one because when she goes back to the house, she hears her baby crying that wasn't even born. And you're looking for it. It's like taunting them. And it rattled her so much she ran home. This is exactly what happened to Nell and the mom. But Miss Dudley's the case where she snapped out of it and got out of the house. And he came back one night and heard it too because he has that same trauma that his wife has. So they're both, that's how the house is going to suck them in. It's like a trap. And we saw in Nell's episode, we saw that the house tricked her like that too, showing what she could have had and what she wanted as like the tempting fruit here and then getting it twisted and turned around and put in a noose. And again, I'm assuming this is what the mom had to go through, some kind of situation like this for her to kill herself. Supposedly kill herself. And great writing here and a great job by Mr. Dudley acting. Him just saying the line, "My girl's first cry I heard, the one she never got." And he's like, that's the last time they ever went in that house at night. Very interesting, because now this is a big reveal that, okay, this bad stuff really only happens at night at Haunting, because he says when they go in the day, they're fine. That's why they're okay with being in the house. And I always wonder that, like, why are they okay being here if they clearly like living off the premise? But they know daytime it's all right. And I love the camera work here, zooming in on his face as he's telling this story, and then zooming back on the face of Hugh, showing how more intense and effective it's getting on Hugh's mindset. Just zooming in here slowly. Really good job. And Mr. Dudley's like, there was no more nightmares now. No scattered behavior, and they stick to that plan, not being in there at night. So he's like, time away from the house will do your wife good. Even a prayer. But see, Hugh says prayer's not a thing, which is interesting because we know the Dudleys are religious, and they really aren't. So we'll see where that comes into play later on. Because they're making a point of it. We just don't know why. So this was a standout scene for me this episode. One of my favorites of the season. It's a real like classic telling of how this haunted house is and what it does. It's like a classic ghost story scene. And it's showing you how much the dad knew there. I would have done more if I was him. Looking back, you know, hindsight's 20/20. But at that point I'd be like, all right, everyone, we're not staying here at night. Even if we have to stay at a hotel, we're done with this house. But he got greedy. He wanted to sell that place. So then we go to current time, and poor Shirley now seeing limos with people she doesn't want to sit with. One being her husband, the other limo having Theo. But her dad appears and offers a ride. And it's literally the man who lost touch with his family now offering a hand to someone who's starting to lose touch with their family and Shirley. But unfortunately, he meant well, but he botches it here. He doesn't give Shirley her space. And he goes for one of those preachy things a dad loves to tell their daughter. We've all seen this before. He's like, look, we all F up, but one day it will be too late. And just, it's perfect. Her mom in the back just keeps telling her, don't. Like, lay off, back up. You're overdoing it. Cheryl needs that space. But he gets invasive here. And this is where he can't control himself, and he's not listening to that good side of his inner monologue, his wife. And the great line here is like, you stuck your hand in the fan. So you see in the past when he actually did that. And did Steve pull that plug or not? I was trying to catch it by pausing it. Doesn't show you if he did or not. But I really think he did, and a ghost put it back in. There's no way he was that incompetent not to do that. And this is just showing you Hugh just does not know when to let it be. He should have just stopped this crazy operation or let the guy who came to look at the place work on it and just let go. And this fan incident sets him off. Now he goes to the red door, which is just a bad idea. And the door will not open. So we go to present, and we're at the burial. And when Luke throws his dirt onto Nell's casket, he sees Bent Neck Nell appear. And then the mom comes up full zombie mode. It's almost like death is just pulling for him. They want to bring Luke in now. He's the most susceptible. Next on the chopping block. And Steve grabs Luke here to calm him. And he's like, I know about this stuff. Hell, I write about it. That made me cringe. Like, come on, Steven. Really? Now he's going to use that as his way where he should be the one telling people about ghosts because he writes about it. And he's like, if you don't get your stuff together, you're going to just end up like Mom and Nell who didn't. And he's right. He's got a good point. And he's like, it's in our genes. It's a sickness. And again, in real life, Steve's the most logical here, and he's correct about this. But in a ghost-haunted story, he's completely wrong. And he's actually giving bad advice here. This is actually making Steve cause most of the problems because if he'd actually listened to someone like Nell and stopped putting her down about these ghosts, maybe she wouldn't have died. So he needs to learn to turn this around and start believing here and start actually addressing the problem of this haunted house. instead of just saying it's not real. He has to face reality. And the dad overhears this, which is important because he really knows what's up. And then back to the past, we get this crazy scene where Liv has a screwdriver on Hugh's throat in the middle of the night. She's having one of these dream state episodes. Again, I can't say enough. I'm so excited for her episode to learn what is going on. It's setting up for such a cool concept. So I hope they do it right. And then Hugh just shows her she drew the forever house repeatedly on these blueprints. And she's even shocked. And he finally suggests for her to take a break. And this whole concept of her, you should go take some time off, is also what's great about the show. We know in this story how it's going of her getting away from this haunted house and overworking. But in real life, it really is hitting on too. Like, people go nuts too when you're just overworking. You have so many kids and you're not letting yourself take a breather and you're not taking care of yourself at all. And she's doing that too. So she's guilty of that. And great acting by Carla here, who plays Liv. This was just a standout scene for me. I love how she plays shocked and confused and in pain. She really nails it. And then back in the present, Liv appears to the father. She's like, it's almost over. You did good. You won't have to see them again if you don't want to, but you do want to. And importantly, Hugh sees Shirley drop her bag and then sees Luke get Shirley's bag. And a big red flag here when he goes to talk to Luke is the cigarette in Luke's ear. It's really never good to see that in someone who's in recovery. Because a cigarette, for them, it's a way also to relax. But it's just going to leave you to more tempting things to make you relax and calm down and depend on something. And the dad says to Luke, I see your mom every day since she died. For me, it's a coping mechanism. But he's like, but people see things sometimes. And Luke stops him and goes, big boys know the difference between what's real and imaginary. Isn't that right, Dad? Boom! Another mic drop moment. This goes back to episode 4, where in Luke's early years, his dad never believed him when he talked about these ghosts. And now here comes his dad telling him basically that, yeah, sometimes there are things that appear. Yeah, a little late. So now the tables have turned in a way. And then back in the past, we see Hugh finds a body behind the wall. And we see Officer Beckley here. And we learn it's William Hill who this body is. He was missing since 48. And we learn he had second thoughts about being behind that wall and tried to scratch his way out. Similar case with Nell's death, where she was trying to get out of that noose at the end. So you know he was under a spell of the house. And then realized, and was like, shoot, I'm in this wall, and tried to get out. And the cop says the Massachusetts laws don't require you, thank God, to tell people who are buying the house that there's been a death here. This moment's convinced me that wherever state I'm in, I hope that the law is not that. Screw that law. You should know now, just in case the house is haunted. And the cop asks him, so is the house haunted? And they both laugh about it. And Hugh's like, at least some of my kids think it is. Should have listened to him, Hugh. Another lesson I learned here is, if my kids are seeing stuff, supernatural or ghosts, I'm listening to them. I'm giving them an ear this time. I'm not just turning it off. Now we get a really good scene in the present where he's with Steve now, Hugh. And he's about to make things right. And his wife's saying the perfect things to say. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I didn't listen. It's the regret of my life. Sorry I couldn't fix it. But then Hugh flies safe again and doesn't say it. That frustrated me. It's like, come on, do it. And then we see Shirley can't find her credit card. And Liv's saying, Hugh, you knew it looked wrong. You knew Luke looked wrong. Your silence doesn't protect them. So this is him learning now through his head. He's kind of changing himself in a way, in a good way. So it was huge to see him finally speak up here. He did the right thing. He said he saw Luke, which was good. And then Theo and Hugh see a little trail of black that leads to Cheryl's office. And we see the forever house is destroyed. Can Shirley get a break here? She just lost her credit card. Her husband just cheated on her with her sister. And now her favorite model is broken. I feel terrible for her. I love Shirley. But she's getting the poop stick here. And then this mom monster, you see, appears to Theo and the dad. And the dad's like freaked out with Theo. But then when Shirley comes in and she sees that forever house, the dad's like, I can fix it. And it brilliantly cuts down to the cop who's like, that's not happening. So it's like, again, come on, Hugh. You have to realize stuff that's just not redeemable. You cannot fix it. Let it go. Handle it a different way. Some things you have to accept as is. And be smart about it. So at the past at the police station, we're seeing Hughes saying the house killed her, and the cop wants to know what happened those 3 hours before he called the police. He's like, I was in shock, mourning, I was grieving. And he's like, I thought my wife left town. But we know Aunt Janet, here we learn, didn't see her. And that night, Shirley saw the mom in the kitchen on the last night, and then he ran up to the red room. And he says to the cop and lies, didn't see anything there. Door's been locked since we moved in. So this is him lying to the cop, which in hindsight might have been the wrong decision. But we get the last shot where we see it was open and he ran in. What did he see? And what is he holding back that he will not tell the police? So it's a nice cliffhanger to get excited for the next episode. Another great episode. I'm giving it a 9.2. This was definitely the least exciting episode of the series so far. Especially these mold sequences. They were important but kind of dragged on a bit. And the reveal being a dead body was kind of a little bit of a letdown. But still, some of the best drama writing here. I like how they're setting up this end. Still leaving a lot of mystery here, especially about the mom and the red room. And I love the symmetry that happens this episode with the dad messing up in the past, trying to make up for it now in the present. I love the redemption arc they've built here. And I like this conflict they've put in with Theo and Shirley, and where this might lead with them to keep interesting conflicts going on throughout the show. So, another great episode. Not my favorite, but it's good. Hope it picks up a bit the next episode. Only got 3 more to go. Please let me know what you thought of this episode down below. I read every comment and respond as many as I can. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to my channel. I will be reviewing every episode of The Haunting of Hill House, so you don't want to miss one. And please follow me at SteveVarley1 on Twitter and Instagram for more of me. And I'll see you next time.